No peace, no respect.
Mic check! Mic check! Mic check!
Okay, our next speaker, we're welcoming the Executive Director of the Canadian Association for Social Workers, Fred Phelps. Fred is a social worker from Saskatchewan that has had the opportunity working with youth at risk, children in need of protection, as well as in areas of social policy and social justice. And he's come here today to talk to us about frontline workers, as well as some other interesting topics that I'm really looking forward to hearing about. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for the introduction. First, I'd like to thank the Occupy Ottawa movement, Bill C10, for organizing this day in opposition to C10. It is my pleasure to be speaking today on behalf of social workers from coast to coast to coast in Canada, whose frontlines experience with poverty, crime, and victimization directly contradicts the direction C10 is taking. Social workers like you have been respectfully appealing to the Prime Minister of Canada to lift the 100-day self-imposed timetable of passing C10, to retract the bill, and to reintroduce it in its components parts in next session, so each of them can be debated on their own merits. We, like you, have been respectfully appealing for the voice of reason and experience to prevail. The respect, unfortunately, up until this moment, and obviously with that gentleman getting arrested, has not been demonstrated or returned.
Shame.
This is what democracy looks like, is correct. Like most social workers in the front line are not against strengthening the rights of victims, but what we are against is the simple dichotomy being used to paint anyone or any organization in opposition to this bill as a supporter of crime. Social workers understand that victims justly require protection, support, and justice. However, victims cannot and will not be honored by creating a system that will create more victims than it supports. I would like to take this time to read a few thoughts on C10 from social workers on the front line who have raised their opposition to this bill directly with Prime Minister Harper. A young social worker from BC writes, "It's extremely frightening that our government has considered taking a position on mandatory minimums that has proven to be a disaster. Why do we keep trying to move backwards?" A retired social worker in Ontario writes, "Proceeding with C10, in my view, is ill-advised. It reflects a narrow view of prevention, an over-reliance on punishment, and a lack of attention to rehabilitation. It is very expensive to implement and will still not achieve the intended objectives. Moreover, the necessity joint planning with the provinces has clearly not taken place. I urge you to take a step back and revisit the whole matter of crime prevention and management." And finally, a practicing social worker in Saskatchewan writes, "For 24 years I've worked with foster kids and struggling families. My husband and daughter both work in federal corrections. Regardless of how your bill will increase the job security for my family, my frontline experience with poverty, crime, and victimization contradicts the direction C10 is taking. In working with foster kids, I know that abandonment and rejection and punishment by adults usually worsens the youth's problems. I do not believe it is any different for people who are chronologically mature but developmentally delayed due to issues of trauma, abuse, neglect, and pain throughout their lives. Working with the causes of this behavior rather than the symptoms is where healing and change truly happens. With all my heart and mind, I believe that the evidence and lived experiences from jurisdictions whose good intentions was also to curb crime, clearly demonstrate that the results expected from C10 will be dramatically different than intended. I always tell my foster parents it takes a big person to admit to a child when you have been wrong. Please, Prime Minister Harper, please show you are big enough to admit you have been wrong in pushing C10. As an organization, the Canadian Association of Social Workers has used its energy in recent years to advocate for a national plan to reduce poverty in Canada. We have actively worked with the Dignity for All campaign, the campaign for a poverty-free Canada, for a national poverty elimination plan that will complement the 7 provinces and territories that have taken leadership and putting plans in place. I bring this up today because if Harper government is prepared to massively invest in C10, it could only mean there are funds available to reduce poverty, reduce homelessness, support skills and retraining, and develop a firm and huge national child care program. If the intent of this government is actually to curb crime, this is the answer. Rather than a massive investment in C10, the opportunity to develop informed and evidence-based plan to support the province in creating safer communities is just right around the corner. And I say it's just around the corner because it is with the renewal of the Canadian Social Transfer in 2014. The Canadian Social Transfer is the single most powerful vehicle for the federal government to support the lives of all Canadians. On behalf of social workers across Canada, I urge the Prime Minister Harper to listen to the voices in opposition to C10, withdraw the bill, and join the majority of Canadians that support rehabilitation and investment in Canadians rather than a deeper investment in prisons and punishment. We urge the Prime Minister to use the money saved from not passing C10 by investing in the Canadian Social Transfer in support of publicly funded childcare, public housing, education, and social services. This transfer and the national plan it could support would contribute to creating safer communities by creating the opportunity that would improve the lives of all Canadians. Again, thank you very much for the Occupy Ottawa movement and everyone here today joining us.